According to the Home Office, what percentage of rape claims are dismissed by the police and receive no further attention? The answer is 5%.
Welcome back to The Right Stuff, live on 5 with James Cracknell Gelford and one Christopher Biggins. Still to come, Biggins. Still to come. Is it selfish to leave your family for weeks, months, maybe years at a time to follow your dreams? Or is it mean of your loved ones to kick up a fuss? There's a question. 0207 173 5555. That's the number if you've got something to say. First, though, a subject we've already started on, actually, over the break. We've all agreed it is really, really, really difficult. Should women who cry rape be made to pay damages to the men whose lives they've tried to ruin? As I said earlier, on the face of it, it's a kind of no-brainer. You did something horrible to me, you tried to ruin my name, you got me sent to prison, but you were found out. I want compensation. Now, typically, you would sue the Crown Prosecution Service, but a former magistrate, a guy called Anthony Hunt, wants to sue the woman who cried rape and ruined his life for 300 grand. He wants the Court of Appeal to clear the way for him to sue her. His accuser's malice and her lies, he argued, led to him, or will argue rather, led to him spending 2 years in jail until his conviction was quashed on appeal. The trouble is, when you consider that only a fraction of genuine rape victims ever come forward because of fears over how they're going to be treated, and that conviction rates for rape trials are very low, much lower than normal crimes, having the threat of being sued for compensation added to the pot hanging over you isn't going to improve the situation. True, you could only go for damages if someone made a deliberate, malicious claim of rape against you. That's what this guy's after. But won't that just become the man's first line of defence in future? She's lying. She set me up. It was consensual. I'm innocent, and I want to sue for damages. Maybe for the greater good, for the good of those 95% of genuine victims who don't come forward, men falsely accused of rape should lose any right to sue their accuser. That's the way it kind of is at present. You can't sue your accuser. What do you think, Biggins?
I think there's such a fine line here, as you've already said. I mean, yes, on principle, I think that he should sue because he's been ridiculed. I mean, he had
2 years in prison.
And he had to go in, when he was in court, he had to admit the reason he couldn't do it was that he had a small member. And that was not, which was the humiliation that his wife suffered afterwards was huge. So he's really been through it. And it's horrible. And I think the problem is that sometimes people who can't get something cause a lot, like can't get someone sexually, cause a lot of problems. Mm-hmm. Now, that shouldn't be thrown away. They've been hideous in what they've done to individual people, so they should pay a price. It's like, for instance, they won't show often the rape victim's photograph.
Never. Very, very rarely.
So, you know, once again, it's all against the rapist, which is difficult.
Or alleged rapist.
Or alleged
purported rapist.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a great, great problem, and I honestly don't know what the answer to it is.
Do you think there's a case to be made, James, for the system picking and choosing which cases could have compensation? Is that the compromise, rather than a blanket rule?
Compensation, you feel that when compensation is ordered, it's going to tie up more time in the courts. Yeah. And is that what we want on one level? And the other one is...
But if someone makes such a malicious claim, I mean, that is evil-tude incarnate, isn't it?
It is. Well, maybe the case, rather than look at the compensation, is look at the anonymity, because a lot of the problems come from, you know, if you get accused of rape, you don't have the same rights as the accuser. So you are...
Anonymity for all,
yeah,
perhaps.
Maybe that's a way of sort of lessening the effect of being
I think that's quite
accused.
sage. That's a sage thought. It would lessen the damage that an individual might suffer if falsely accused. Yeah. If their identity wasn't known, they would be less damaged. That's a good idea. Gail?
I agree with you. I think that's a good idea, but you can't imagine, because when anyone says rape around anybody, it sticks like glue, and you've seen it with personalities, whether here or in the States, and the minute it's sort of branded around, people have got this preconceived idea about what this person's like. So you think, well, how is this person going to get on? Is it going to compensation? Is that going to help? And like you said before, are other people going to not come forward because they're worried about what other people have done? It is evil what these people put other people through, but I don't know.
I mean, maybe evil. Really... I'd like to think there's not that many of them. I don't know. We tried to find out how many false, malicious accusations of rape have had. I mean, all I know is of the cases that I'm aware of in the papers, and there you're talking about a few a year. But I wouldn't like to say that that's the whole picture or even an accurate picture. Those are the only ones I'm aware of.
People shouldn't be raped.
Well,
you know, so it is a very serious thing, because if someone has, if someone has been raped.
But would you come forward if you were a woman terrified of coming forward under the present status quo, and it was then shifted that if you were to lose the case and the defendant was to make a claim that you maliciously, wrongly and deliberately invented the whole scenario to do him down, and then he's going to come after you individually for damage, you could lose your house, right? As well as everything else, would you step forward into the lion's mouth then? I don't think I would.
No, I don't think I would.
The problem is that, from the stuff I've read, is that if you assault someone, there's sort of actual bodily harm, grievous bodily harm, attempted murder. With rape, it seems to go from, there's a starting point and then there's the big step to there. There's not sort of one which is, some of the cases are, they've both been out for drinks, was there consent?
Indeed.
There's no grey area. And
I think within sentencing, judges have been given so much advice that they grade it.
In terms of grades of rape to be accused of, maybe that would make it, again, slightly easier for courts and people to come forward rather than just saying it has to be compensation.
But then you then grade it as one rape less of an offence against the person than another.
But you want people to come forward.
Yes.
95% aren't coming forward, then it's not working, is it?
Yeah, well said. So, does that have any bearing on whether or not those falsely accused of rape should be able to claim compensation? Let's see what you have to say. Kirsty.
Anne's husband was falsely accused, and she's on line 2.
Morning, Anne.
Good morning.
Maliciously and deliberately and falsely accused?
Maliciously, deliberately and falsely accused 20 years ago. I just had a baby. It was the worst experience of our whole lives. We were under 9 months of sheer hell.
I bet.
And eventually it went to court and she admitted she'd made the whole story up because of her boyfriend. It destroyed our lives, and 20 years on has still destroyed our lives. I've had 2 children. We got divorced. We've got 2 children that have grown up with a single parent, albeit Dad has had a huge part of their lives, but we couldn't cope under the strain. So 20 years on, it has also destroyed our children's lives because they've now grown up without a mum and dad together. And she walked away.
Well, let's cut to the chase here then. Compensation?
She should definitely have been able. She should definitely have been identified, and she should have been prosecuted.
Okay, now so identified, prosecuted, fine. Compensation,
We weren't interested in compensation.
Right, but that Anne, is what we're asking now, because it's really interesting, because I think convicted, actually punished for what she's done, exposed. Yeah. I'm totally with you. I don't think anybody would argue there. Could you imagine, should someone in your ex-husband's position be allowed to claim compensation from her personally rather than from the state?
We weren't interested in money. Right. We just wanted our lives back.
But if someone was, Anne, if someone was like this judge, or magistrate rather...
I don't know the answer to that, because it wasn't something that we were interested, but they should definitely be exposed for doing what they do to people and destroying people's lives, and definitely be prosecuted.
Okay, Anne, thank you.
I'm not really into going down the compensation route for anything, really.
No, well, good for you, I would say, but a lot of people are changing, and as I said before, you can claim as a victim of crime, which would be a claim against the state. What this magistrate is after is actually a personal claim of damages against his accuser. Thank you. Let's have another.
Tiffany's next on line 1.
Tiffany, good morning.
Good morning.
What do you think?
Well, I've basically got 2 views on this. It's basically the same as you, really. If it's genuinely fake, then I think that the courts have got a claim to prosecute, because at the end of the day, it's taxpayers' money that pay for these cases to go ahead anyway. Mm-hmm. And personally, I think that the court should be entitled to compensation, as well as the victim who got allegedly sent down for raping someone when actually it was all fake.
But what if this means, if this was to become a ruling, a precedent, do you think that would encourage genuine victims to come forward or put them off?
I think it should encourage them, really, not put them off, because at the end of the day, these people who go around falsely accusing people of rape, they should be hit in prison themselves to see how they feel. I'm just having their name hit through the mud. But then there are genuine people who have been raped, who are scared to go
to the police.
And now they've got one more thing. But they would have one more thing to be scared of, wouldn't they, Tiffany, now, which would be that they could lose their home. Yeah, it's not just... So it's a big price to pay. Thank you. Eric, our audience.
OK, next meets Joe. So what do you think about this, Joe?
Hi, I think it's a really difficult issue because rape is such an emotive area. The cases that are most difficult to prove with rape is when it's a known offender. And I think if you look at the cases, those are the higher proportion of rape cases tend to be somebody that the victim knows. And they're the people who are less likely to come forward. And I think it would deter them because just the court process is so difficult. And then if you think you have to then go through that again when somebody's...
And could lose your house. I mean, that's the kind of figure you're playing with.
But when you hear personal stories of men who've been accused of rape, you can kind of... You can understand why they want to go down that route. But I think in balance, you've got to look at where the balance lies. You've got more women not coming forward than I would imagine you've got men being falsely accused. So you've got to look at...
What if you spent 2 years in jail? Because this magistrate, I mean, you know, he has... I mean, that's the ultimate misery, I suppose.
I mean, I think, again, I think I agree with you where you're kind of claiming against the state.
Yes.
Because the prosecution has to prove a case, and then if the person's found guilty, then they sort of claim against the state rather than the victim. Because if you risk putting more women off, our rates of conviction have actually reduced, dropped in years.
It's less than 10, I think it's about 6% of rapes actually that go to trial lead to a conviction. And I think with regular crime it's about 34%. So
we're not even going in an upward direction, we're going in a downward direction. Less convictions are going through. And it just looks at the whole...
But then I'd also have to counter that within... I've done journalism now 20-something years, 20 more than 20, going on for 25 years. And it strikes me that either I'm becoming aware of it or it's getting different publicity or it's changing, which is there are more and more stories of men being falsely accused. That these stories seem to be coming not thick and fast, but regularly.
Yeah. And I think maybe we need to look at why women are making false accusations. You know, I think sometimes women who make false accusations may have had an experience of rape. May
well have done.
Like children.
What about James' idea? Maybe we can cut this off at the pass, and if we dealt with the anonymity issue, I know Tony Blair looked at it in sort of post John Leslie, post Mick Hucknall, all those stories, and he looked at it and decided, no, we're going to stick with the status quo. Do you think perhaps that we should give anonymity
I think the anonymity to both the accused and the...
And everyone's nodding in agreement. Everybody always seems to be in agreement with that.
It sort of would, you know, would take faces out of the paper. And,
I still think people would know because it gets out.
And it does stick. You know, it's like child abuse. An allegation of child abuse is you know, it sticks. But we have to keep people coming forward because if people don't come forward, then it just buries the issue again. We have to keep rape victims and sexual abuse cases coming forward, and we have to be prosecuting more of them.
Horrible situation, isn't it? Really horrible situation. Thank you for that. Let's have one more, please, Kirsty.
Karen's on line 3.
Carol.
Hi.
Carol, hello.
Hello.
Hello. What do you think?
Well, I am a genuine rape victim who has been through the court system, and it took a very, very long time.
Did you win your case?
I technically, yes. We ended up in America because the guy raped someone over there, and he got 150 years under their judicial system.
Right. Okay.
I believe that there should be some kind of deterrent against people crying wolf.
Right.
And if that means that it's damages or prosecution, then I'm all for it, because that then leaves the police clear to do the job that they need to do for the genuine victims.
But what if the two concerns I have is, one, that it puts off genuine victims from coming forward because they're worried that if they lose the case, and we know that rape trials are very difficult to secure a conviction, we've just been talking about that, so it could put people off because they'd worry that not only may I have to go through a horrible and hideous, harrowing courtroom experience, but may then subsequently lose my house. And secondly, that it may lead to men, their first line of defence will always be, she made it up, it's a malicious claim against me, because then if he wins the case, even if he's guilty, he wins the case, he can then make a claim for damages.
True, and it is a risk. There's no perfect system.
What about, I mean,
don't men say that anyway? Don't they say it was consensual? And I mean, I agree with James in a way that there are sort of grey areas, because obviously,
you know, some do go out on a date and then it's date rape, some get raped in their own home, some get raped going home. There are different degrees, there's stalking, there's all kinds of different things. And the police look into all that.
What about anonymity? Do you think we could, I mean, James's idea right at the beginning, that if we gave anonymity to all, both accuser and accused, that it would take some of the sting out of the situation until the matter was resolved in court? Would that be a compromise, perhaps?
Possibly. You know, it would, but at the end of the day, it is a very difficult thing. I mean, the first thing, I'm not going into detail, please don't be frightened. The first thing when I opened the door to the police on my ordeal, he was asked over his radio, is this genuine? And I'll never forget that. And I swore and told him it was. And police shouldn't really, you know, have to have that as their first thought. Their first thought should be for the victim. And if whatever we put in can make...
I'll tell you what, though, Karen,
I'll
have to say, the trauma that you went through, when you said that the guy ended up with 150 years, I sat and thought, sometimes America really has got it ahead of us in terms of the justice game, yeah? And you put that against people that do 5, 6 or 7 years over here and then get out maybe after 3 or 4.
Well, the man was murdered abroad for rape.
Yeah.
That was the penalty. Yeah. Not murdered.
But it's just that when you hear something like that, you think 150 years. Thank you, Karen. In fact, thank you, everybody. Isn't it just a wonderful thing, this show? You get all great views, everybody thinks things through. Oh, the summer break's coming, I'm going to miss it. After the ads, is it selfish to leave your family for months at a time to go off and follow your dreams, James? I mean, racing to the pole is one thing, but what about the rest of us? You might work offshore on an oil rig or serve in the armed forces or go away to college or university, leaving your loved ones to struggle on without you. Is that fair? Or is it mean of them, your loved ones, to kick up a fuss? Now, there's a question. 0207 173 5555 is the number for all those thoughts, and we'll hear as many as we can, as usual, after the break.
Who put their pop career on hold to support their husband? Jessica Taylor, Victoria Beckham or Louise Redknapp? Find out after the ads.